A legendary hero was betrayed by the woman he loved. His body was shattered, his powers sealed away, and now he lives like a caged monster. But after seeing his memories, Hibiki makes a terrifying decision. He's going to save the fallen hero. Hibiki decides to take Claude and Lillian shopping for gear, and after Claude picks out his armor, he looks like a true warrior. That said, Hibiki is rather surprised that Claude uses a spear as his main weapon, since he always assumed a hero would use only a sword. Claude explains that a spear suits his build far better than a sword, and as for the partial armor, wearing a full set would make it unbearably hot and restrict his movement in battle. After Claude finishes picking his gear, Lillian chooses an outfit as well, and Hibiki thinks it looks great on her. But the moment the shopkeeper says it costs 25 gold, Hibiki nearly chokes with shock, only to learn that for adventurer equipment, that price is actually considered cheap. Lillian tells Hibiki he doesn't need to buy the gear for her if it'll cost too much, but Hibiki assures her that it's perfectly fine because her life is way more important to him than a little money. Even so, after spending this much money, Hibiki realizes they'll go broke very quickly if they don't start completing quests soon. And to make matters worse, Vinny gets jealous when he sees everyone else receive new gear, so he picks out a collar for himself, costing Hibiki another 15 gold coins. Later that day, Vinny brings everyone out onto the plane to give Hibiki his first magic training lesson. Hibiki asks if they can postpone the training for a while, because making more money is a much higher priority right now. Still, Vinny insists that this is really important since both Hibiki and Lillian lack any knowledge of the fundamentals of adventuring, much less the basics of magic. Vinny promises to teach Hibiki everything he needs to know about magic, and Hibiki gets excited because he thinks this means he will be able to fight with magic. But then Vinny crushes Hibiki's expectations by telling him that the best magic he'll ever use is basic household magic. The moment Hibiki hears this, he falls into despair, convinced he'll remain a weakling forever. Even so, Vinny tells him that it's important to learn how to control magic power, so for their first lesson, he is going to have Hibiki learn how to circulate mana so he can get Lillian's magic power under control. And the first step towards that end is to register him as an accountable party. Hibiki asks him how he is going to do that, but before Hibiki can even get an answer, Vinny bites his finger, and that is apparently all it takes to complete the registration. Then Vinny goes up to Lillian and tells her that from now on, her magic power will be limited to around 10%, so she doesn't harm her body. The better Lillian becomes at controlling her magic, the more of her true power she'll be able to unleash. The next step in the process is for Hibiki to dual cultivate with Lillian and circulate mana between their bodies to stabilize it. But Hibiki has no idea how to do any of that, so Vinny asks Claude to inject some of his mana into Hibiki's body to give him a feel for it. Claude does as instructed, and a moment later, Hibiki finds himself in a space with no one else around him. A moment later, Hibiki notices an elf woman sitting beside a lake, so he approaches her, and she calls him by Claude's name. Hibiki is confused at first, but then he looks down at himself and realizes he really is Claude, so these must be Claude's memories. The elf woman's name is Anastasia, and Claude has been by her side since she was little. They cried, laughed, fought together, and Claude truly believed those peaceful days would last forever. But one day, Anastasia betrayed him, massacring an entire troop of soldiers before severing Claude's arm, all while smiling. By the time Hibiki wakes up, Claude is standing over him, asking if he is awake. At first, Hibiki is convinced he is Claude, but after a few minutes, Hibiki is reminded of who he is. Hibiki thinks it's weird that he genuinely believed he was Claude for a moment there, but Vinny explains that it was likely because Claude shared his mana with him, plunging Hibiki deep into Claude's consciousness, and causing him to lose his sense of self for a while. On that note, Vinny asks Hibiki whether he saw anything interesting in Claude's memories, but Hibiki can't remember much of what happened aside from the fact that it was bad. A little while later, Hibiki is busy training himself to use household magic. To learn household magic, Hibiki has to repeat the same chore movements over and over, but even after training for quite a while, Sappo tells him he still hasn't made any progress. Just then, Lillian and Claude come in looking for Hibiki, because it's time for dinner, but Claude accidentally knocks over a bucket, undoing all of Hibiki's hard work mopping the floor. Claude begs Hibiki for forgiveness, but Hibiki says it's not that big a deal since he can clean the floor again. While Claude is still panicking over the mess he made, Hibiki quickly cleans not only the entire room but also the hallway at ridiculous speed. After Hibiki is done, he asks Sappo if that was enough for him to unlock the household magic yet, but Sappo tells him he still has a long way to go. Just then Tanya comes up to call the group down for dinner, and she is amazed by what she sees because the hallway has never been this clean before. Tanya asks Hibiki whether he did this, and after Hibiki confirms it, she tells him she is very pleased. Tanya is so impressed that she offers Hibiki some extra milk during dinner, and while Hibiki thinks nothing of the comment, Tanya is clearly implying something much more direct. Later on, Hibiki and Lillian continue their magic training, and Lillian has already learned to conjure some basic spells, which Hibiki finds very impressive, while she and Vinay work on improving Lillian's control. Claude approaches Hibiki and asks if he would like to do some physical training today. Hibiki isn't exactly against the idea, but he doubts he is strong enough to use a sword in battle. But not to worry because Claude already thought of that, which is exactly why he brought a bow for Hibiki to use instead. Claude sets up a target for Hibiki to practice on, but despite his best efforts, Hibiki turns out to be just as terrible at archery as he is at almost everything else. However, no matter how useless Hibiki may seem, Claude refuses to give up on him, and orders him to stretch his back, draw the bowstring further, and try again. Now that Hibiki is using proper form, his arrows are at least making it all the way to the tree, but his aim is still trash. Hibiki is exhausted because he had no idea archery was so demanding, given that Amelia made it look so effortless, but Claude tells him he will get used to it the more he practices. After hours of training, Hibiki begs Claude to let him take a break because his hands are red and swollen, but Claude casually tells him to stop being silly since healing magic means there's no reason for him ever to stop training. Just like that, Hibiki is forced to fire arrows at the tree over and over, while elsewhere, Amelia is still on her way back to her hometown, wondering how Hibiki is doing. Amelia is sure Hibiki would be surprised to learn she has actually made friends on her journey, and Styria notices Amelia seems in a good mood about something, but Amelia says she doesn't know what Styria is talking about. The path ahead splits into two sections, but even though Amelia knows one of them is shorter, she still suggests they take the other. Yver asks why, so Amelia explains that the shortcut leads through a ruined forest, and rumor has it that the souls who haunt that forest play tricks on anyone who approaches, so it is best to keep their distance. However, despite Amelia's warning, Yver thinks the forest sounds interesting, and decides to go check it out. Amelia doesn't understand why Yver would want to go into a haunted forest, but Yver says places like these are usually where you find hidden treasure, so it's worth checking out. Amelia understands why Yver is interested, but she is pretty sure any treasure hidden in the forest was long ago taken by passing adventurers. That said, Amelia still agrees to go because she is pretty much broke right now, so there is a chance to find some treasure. Amelia might as well go for it. Meanwhile, back on Hibiki's end, while Lillian continues her training, Hibiki is busy making lunch for everyone, and after tasting it, he realizes it's a little bland. So Hibiki is about to add some spices, and Lillian wants to help, so she hands Hibiki the salt and pepper, and when Lillian tastes the food, she thinks it's absolutely delicious. Once the food is ready, Hibiki serves everyone and they all love the meal he made. But when Hibiki tries one of the mushroom sides Claude prepared, he instantly realizes something is wrong because Claude forgot to clean the mushrooms properly. Hibiki also notices a distinct lack of apples on the table when he recalls asking Claude to get some. Claude pretends he forgot about the apples, but Lillian quickly finds an entire pile hidden behind him, and scolds him for trying to cover up his mistake. Hibiki asks if Claude at least knows how to butcher monsters, since most adventurers can do that much, and Claude proudly states that he's great at butchering, so Hibiki tells him that that's going to be his job from now on because his cooking skills are absolute garbage. Claude shrinks back in shame and insists the curse is the reason he's terrible at cooking, even claiming he'll become an amazing chef once Hibiki removes it. Unfortunately for him, neither Hibiki nor Lillian believes that for a second. Speaking of the curse, Hibiki asks Claude who placed it on him in the first place. Claude thinks for a second, then says he doesn't know, and Hibiki doesn't question him any further after that. Later that night, while Hibiki is washing dishes in the river, Sappo suddenly informs him that he has finally unlocked a household spell that can automatically wash things. Hibiki is really excited to hear this, but Sappo has one more thing to mention. A large boar monster is heading this way. Sure enough, there really is a boar monster, and it seems really mad for some reason. But Hibiki and the others aren't too worried because Claude handles the monster instantly, killing the giant boar with a single spear strike. Even though the immediate threat has been dealt with, Claude warns that if they don't address the boar's blood soon, the scent will attract even more monsters. This is where the new spell Lillian learned comes in, because she can use it to suck up and isolate all the blood from the boar, so all that's left is a clean carcass, and now Claude plans to use the opportunity to teach Hibiki how to butcher a monster, so that he can try it himself next time, and Hibiki seems a little hesitant because butchering sounds really gross. Meanwhile, back on Amelia's end, she and the others have just reached the fort in the ruined forest, and Yver is convinced that if there is any treasure, it must be in there. Both Amelia and Styria decide to go in to check it out, and while they are gone, Yver checks whether this place contains the restless souls she is after. Even though there are indeed restless souls here, they're not what Yver is after. Meanwhile, inside the fort, Amelia and Styria fall victim to the forest's ghostly illusions. Amelia hallucinates finding a mountain of treasure, while Asteria ends up trapped in a far more embarrassing hallucination involving Amelia, but in reality, neither of those things is happening. Back with Hibiki, the group has finished packing up all the boar meat, and is preparing to continue their journey, but all that work got them really dirty, so Hibiki wants to take a bath, but there is no time for that right now. Fortunately, Hibiki has finally learned the bubble wash spell and wants to test it out immediately, but the moment Claude and Lillian hear that, they get nervous because Hibiki's magic experiments usually end in disaster. Unfortunately, it's already too late to stop him as Hibiki has already cast the spell on Claude. Surprisingly, the magic works perfectly, leaving Claude looking like some Wolfman fashion model. Except, the moment the spell touches Claude's body, something goes horribly wrong. The curse reacts. Black veins begin crawling across his skin, his breathing turns violent, and suddenly, Claude grabs Hibiki by the throat. Not like a friend, like a monster remembering how to kill. Then Claude whispers a name that freezes everyone in place. But the way he says it isn't hatred, it's fear. And deep inside the forest, a woman slowly opens her eyes, then smiles.
Claude! I finally found you!